Is there someone that you've been able to influence that you really sort of,
So someone that I worked with probably close to 20 years ago, recruited them into my team. I'm one of these people that's a bit of a flat structure. I don't believe in the whole hierarchy, Whilst this person technically reported to me, I very much saw us as working together. They came into an industry that they didn't know. They certainly had the HR background, but not an industry that they weren't familiar with. And we got along really well, and I like to think that they are now a partner in a large consulting organisation, and I like to take some of the credit for that.
Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we unpack all things influence and we help leaders particularly find their influence by talking to amazing humans and finding out what influence means to them, who they've been influenced by and who they have influenced. And this podcast episode proudly sponsored by the Guinea Group of companies. The Guinea Group helps leaders upgrade, upskill, uplift their teams and their influence. Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where we unpack all things influence with the amazingest humans, if amazingest is a word. Today, team, thank you to all our viewers and our listeners for joining. Today, we have got the amazing Andrea Hayden, or is a Chief People Officer, People and Culture Strategist, a leadership and culture advocate, which I love, and positive psychology practitioner, right up our alley. We are very much into positive psychology. Andrea is from the Greater Melbourne area. Andrea is a seasoned and commercially astute human resource exec with more than 30 years of experience partnering with leaders to drive organisational performance and cultural transformation across diverse industry sectors, including the financial services sector, the technology sector, retail and manufacturing. Angela brings a strategic lens to aligning business strategy with people and culture initiatives that build capability, enhance engagement, and deliver measurable outcomes. Currently serving as HR Director, Oceania region at Kasha Australia, Andrea leads the full spectrum HR function across Australian Oceania, designing and executing and strengthening the employee experience. And that really aligns with the work we do in the psychological safety space. Welcome to the Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea, where this episode is proudly sponsored by Troy Sordy, who is the owner and founder of Titan IND and is on the board of the Reboot Mindset Academy. Let's have an amazing chat to Andrea Hayden. What did I forget, Andrea?
Nothing, I don't think. It all sounds quite impressive. I'm not sure who wrote that.
It sure does. It's very impressive.
Makes me feel old, though. Over 30 years experience makes me feel old.
Lucky you only look like you're in your 20s.
Thank you. It's the filter.
Stop it. So, Andrea, talk me through, I guess, so we're going to find your influence. How would you define the word influence? What does that mean to you as a HR practitioner and I guess a culture transformationalist?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, Anton, and it's something that I tend to talk about quite a bit with my team and other people who work in the HR field. Typically, being HR practitioners, we have a certain amount of authority, but we typically are in a support function. So we're the ones that work behind the scenes to coach, empower, enable, and make sure that our people have all the things that they need to be successful. So we're not typically the ones that are going to sit there and say a definitive yes or no, because we don't own the cost center. We don't necessarily own the sales budget. So for us, influence is around how do we influence, or how do we, help make those decisions when we're not necessarily the final decision maker. So how do we work with others in the business to make sure that those decisions are made, and how we influence those, I guess, for want of a better word.
Yeah, cool. I like it. And I think the first time I ever heard the word influence was around, you're not in charge of these people, but you still need to have an impact or an effect on their character, their behavior, the decisions, the development.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where I guess when I think back over my career, and I think, when did I really first hear that word? And it was, you don't have charge or control. You need to make a difference with influence, which is really in the HR function summed up, right?
Absolutely. And I think you've really, there's two words there that you said that jumped out at me, which is very much around impact and effect. How do we have that on people when you're not that final decision maker?
Mm.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
what is the skill then, Andrea? How do you have that impact or effect on humans, and hopefully change that behaviour or their decision making without direct
So,
control?
yeah, absolutely. I guess I narrow it down to three key things. Um, the first one, and in no particular order, but I would say the first one is definitely having the relationships within the business. You need to build those relationships. You're not going to get anywhere if people don't feel that they have that trust with you, that you understand the challenges that they're facing, and that you have, some knowledge that will support them. So you absolutely have to have those relationships internally. The second one I would say is that you need to have some credibility in the bank. So people need, again, this word trust, but people need to trust that you have some runs on the board and you've got that proven success, that they can look back at that credibility that you've banked over the years and know that you do know what you're talking about, and that you can have that impact and effect that they're looking for. And I think the third one is to have evidence and facts to support what you're wanting to do. So I could sit here and spout a whole stack of information and just ream off sentences that sound impressive. But if I don't have the evidence or the facts to back that up, it's not going to mean anything, and you're going to get found out pretty quickly. And it's one of the things that I really learnt when I was studying positive psychology is everyone thinks, this is all woo woo, but there is so much evidence to support a lot of the psychology, the positive psychology practices. And so that really came into play with me as well in the workplace. So I think it's kind of three things. It's very much those relationships, credibility in the bank, and having the evidence and the facts to support what you're trying to influence.
Wow, thank you. That's such a great answer and so succinctly put. I love that, Andrea. So beautiful. Thank you. Um, Relationships, credibility, evidence, and facts. Because without evidence, facts, really, it's just it doesn't mean anything. Like you said, and it won't. Yeah, I like that. So tell me about the positive psychology, if you could please, Andrea, because I'm right into positive psychology. How does that come into influence piece? Does that mean that you show up with the right energy, or it show like what's positive psychology look like from an influence perspective?
Um, it's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure there's a really simple answer. There's so many ways you can describe, pos psych or well-being science, which is another positive term for it. And I think a lot of people look at positive psychology as just you're the eternal optimist, nothing ever gets you down, and that's just not the reality. It's looking at how do we feed all aspects of our well-being, and there's different aspects of it. There's financial well-being, there's physical well-being, there's mental well-being, and we can really influence all of these in the day-to-day work environment. People like to know, you can impact your mental well-being through all sorts of things like meditation, grounding, being connected to community, your physical well-being through exercise and all the dopamine hits. Nutrition contributes significantly to that. But if you then look at the hardcore corporate side of it, there's a whole component around behavioral well-being and financial well-being that people need. And a lot of that you can tie back to how you influence their career. So you can tie that back to how do you look at people's goals and objectives? Do they know what the boundaries are in the workplace? Do they know what they're actually working towards and what they need to achieve? And is anyone having those difficult or tough conversations with them if they're not doing those things? So putting all of that in place is also a direct impact on someone's well-being, whether they realize that or not. And it's something that I've really started to talk about over the last couple of years as well, is that it's not just the mindset piece, although that is highly, highly important. It's not just doing a meditation once or twice a day. It's actually in all your everyday activities. It's how you talk to people. It's how you listen to people. It's how you respond. It's how you set those boundaries. It's how you know what it is that you're actually trying to achieve rather than just fronting up every day.
Nice. And in your sort of current work, so we obviously we're in a psychological safety and we work with leaders on creating psychologically safe workplaces and the 4 stages of psych safety and all that sort of that good stuff around how we engage our team members with the right leadership characteristics and traits and skills. How does psych safety play into the positive psychology in your mind, Andrea? Are they sort of linked?
They're definitely linked. It's definitely around creating that safe space. And I think a lot of that ties back to some of the behaviors that I mentioned earlier, which is very much around setting boundaries and listening. You need to create an environment where people know what the expectations are, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable. But also having leaders in the business at all levels that listen and listen properly. So they listen to understand, they don't listen to respond. It's one of my favorite mantras. Um, and yeah, so very much around having that listening environment as well, not and having the avenues for people to raise concerns, because a lot of the time if someone's not feeling psychologically safe, they're going to find it really difficult to talk to someone around what that looks like for them. So you need to have the various tools and avenues in place that it can be raised in a safe environment.
Right, nice. Is that internal or external, do you think? Is that like an EAP or is that like an employee ambassador or a
I think
wellbeing
it's
officer?
both. I don't think there's one rule fits all, and I don't think that one tool is the answer either. So if I look at what we've got in place, we have we have mental health champions, so we have mental health first aiders, we have an EAP service, and we also have a regular pulse survey that touches on these topics as well, where people can raise issues within their team anonymously. So we know roughly where the issues are, and then we can tread very softly as we navigate into trying to find what they are. But it means that people can actually raise them in a safe, confidential environment via a piece of software, basically.
Wow. So you survey from a pulse perspective, and I guess a lot of that's confidential, and then you get this
Yeah.
this really cool regular check on the temperature of your organization and how people are feeling, how they're experiencing the business. And I guess some of that would be the engagement measures as well. So yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I love that. I love that. What great stuff. Great stuff. Now, talking about influence, thank you. So there's the definition, there's the application, some experiential stuff. Who's been that human for you over time, Andrea, that you think, you look back and you go, you know what, just without them, I wouldn't have been where I am. They saw my potential or they were able to do those 3 things for me. Who
Yeah,
is important?
absolutely. Um, I'd say, I mean, I've had some absolutely fantastic leaders over the years. But my very, very first, what I refer to as my very first corporate leader. So in my first role as an HR professional, back when HR was still seen as a bit of a paper pushing policy police, fun police environment in a very large top 4 banking organization in Australia, I had a leader that was well ahead of her time. She would be successful now, even so. So she was very much looking forward and looking at that business partnering approach and how do we understand the business, the challenges, influence the business, get out there, get our hands dirty. She was teaching me that, 25, 30 years ago. And I've taken it with me in every role and every industry I've ever been in. And I actually caught up with her last year. I hadn't seen her in years, and she's left the industry long ago, gone and done something completely different. Um, but her way of working, yeah, just stuck with me the whole way through. It was very much around building those relationships and building that credibility and and understanding who the people are that you're working with. So she was well ahead of her time. And I think I feel very privileged and lucky that I had her as my very first real corporate leader to learn from.
Wow, privileged. and lucky to have that human. That's so cool when you can talk like that about your first leader, because you would have seen some of the research too, Andrew, just about the importance of your first leader when you go into the workplace. We're so spongy when we're young, and we just rely
Absolutely.
so much on those first leaders. And if we get a great one, we remember them forever. If we get a poor one, we also remember them forever, just for different reasons.
Absolutely. Funnily enough, one of them came up in conversation today.
No,
We won't go there because it was not a good experience.
that's right. We'll keep it positive.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I got to tell you, that's really, really cool. I don't hear that as often as I probably would like to. Just my first leader was amazing. I feel privileged to work for this person and work with this person because, yes, they built relationship credibility, but they understood people. They got to know their humans. And that was not a typical 1900s behavior.
Absolutely not. And certainly not in those environments where it was, in other parts of that business, it was very much around the policy police and just, driving the negativity home kind of thing. Yeah, it was a very current, what I would call now a current day approach, but back then, so it was quite revolutionary.
A 2000s approach in the 1900s. Wow, I like it. I love that. Well said. Well said. And just out of interest sake, did that person go on and be a successful leader in other organizations? I'm going to say yes.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Good on that person. Love them. So who in your life, Andrew, or in your career, who do you look back on with pride and say that I was that leader for someone else, that when they think of me in 20 years, I'm pretty sure that they'll go, gee, I was privileged to work with Andrea Hayden for that period of time. Is there someone that you've been able to influence that you really sort of,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So someone that I worked with probably close to 20 years ago, recruited them into my team. And I'm also I'm one of these people that's a bit of a flat structure. I don't believe in the whole hierarchy, I'm going to autocratic, all kinds of things. So whilst this person technically reported to me, I very much saw us as working together. Um, and they came into an industry that they didn't know. They certainly had the HR background, but not an industry that they weren't familiar with. And we got along really well. And I like to think that they are now a partner in a large consulting organization, and I like to take some of the credit for that.
go, yeah, so you should.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're great friends to this day. And I do have that conversation with her that the student surpassed the master, and she's definitely become the master. Um, because yeah, so and she would I'd like to say she would agree with that statement. We have had that conversation. But yes, I'd like to think that it's someone that I've definitely influenced. But again, I used all the behaviors that I'd learnt, through my career and from some of my first leaders, and I took all of those into my leadership style, all of those learnings.
And a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Troy Sordy. Troy's a business owner and the driving force behind Titans of Coal, a purpose-led sporting initiative built as his entrepreneurial sandbox/side gig. He serves as a director on the board of Reboot Mindset Academy, supporting individuals who want to detach from destructive habits and rebuild their lives. There's a link below if you want to connect with the Reboot Mindset Academy to rebuild your life. Wow. And it sounds like you're grateful for some of those, that obviously privileged, that's grateful to have a great leader that you could then go and role model and then have a positive impact and a positive effect on another human who's gone on. I love it when you said they outshine the master, and I think or outshine the coach, and outachieve. And I think, that should be every coach's goal.
Absolutely.
Get them to your level. We can't take them further, but hopefully someone else can take them further. They're ready for their next coach, for the next great leader.
Absolutely. It should always be like the coach should have the best intentions for the people that they're coaching. And you want them to move on to bigger and better things. It's not a competition. Life should not be a competition. I'm not at the Olympics.
And celebrate others' success. And be happy for people when they achieve great things. Beautiful. Well said. I'm talking to one of my coaches this afternoon as well, and we had the same conversation about when I get to that level, where we, who's the next coach after after that person.
Yeah.
So, mm,
Yep.
I
Definitely.
love it. Now, you do a lot of work in the leadership space, from what I can see, which is really cool, and so do we. We're grateful to get that opportunity with plenty of businesses, which is great. Um, and leadership's such an important part of organisational development, organisational culture. Second most important job on planet Earth, I say, Andrea. The most important job is parenting, because that obviously shaping the hearts and the minds of our little humans. But leadership shapes the hearts and minds and has a really similar impact, not at home, but at work, on people's emotional state. What does leadership mean to you, Andrea? How would you sort of define the concept of leadership?
Look, I think that the leadership for me is around, the behaviors that you display and the behaviors that you accept. So I can't remember who the quote was from, but there was a quote that I saw many years ago, and it's stuck with me, and I live by it. The behavior you walk past is the behavior you accept. And it's for me, leadership isn't around staying in your lane, only working within your functional area of expertise. It's a behavior, and it's very much around role modeling what you want to see in others, and having them see that in you, basically. So, as I said, role modeling what I would like. I'm the role model for what I want to see in other people, and yeah, not walking past behavior that I wouldn't accept. So um, I used to work for a large shopping center management company, and we had it drilled into us from our CEO whenever you were down, like our offices were in one of the shopping centers. And whenever you were down in that shopping center, if you saw a piece of rubbish, pick it up and put it in the bin. If you saw a customer, in trouble, help them. If you saw a customer playing in the water fountain, ask them very politely not to. So he was like, doesn't matter who you are in the organization, you can show leadership qualities and leadership behaviors, and you should be role modeling what we want to see in others. And I expect that from all of you. I do it, and I expect it from every single person in the organization. And that's another thing that's really stuck with me as well. Doesn't matter who you are, what level you are, anyone can be a leader. You don't need to have people reporting into you. And it is very much around showing those behaviors. And it's that honesty, that integrity, um, and really showing up for people.
Wow. Honesty, integrity, and showing up. Wow. Now, we talked about 1900s to 2000s leadership, and some of our listeners and viewers will be too young to remember what 1900s leadership was like. What have you seen? What have you seen? See, part of the I guess the intro that I read out for you was, I think the word transformation came up in there somewhere, and I love the word transformational leadership. And some people say it's overused, whereas I still am a big believer in transformational versus transactional leadership. What do you think has changed, sort of in the last, let's say, 25 years in leadership, Andrea? What are the biggest things that have happened in organisations from a leadership perspective?
I think we've very much moved away from or I like to think we've very much moved away from a management approach. And you see all the things and read all the things around managers versus leaders. But if I look back to when I first started my career and how I would define things now in hindsight, we didn't have leaders, we had managers. It was hierarchical, people told you what to do, there were boundaries, you didn't step outside those, there were authority levels, and that's just how it was. It was quite black and white. Whereas I think things have become a lot more grey and a lot more fluid, agile, collaborative, all the buzzwords. But I think those environments that are quite autocratic don't really exist anymore. Certainly not in the organizations I work in, and certainly not the environments that I feel that I'm successful in. I think leadership has become quite democratic and quite collaborative, um, and very much around ensuring that the right people are heard and have a voice and have that seat at the table. So it does come back to that collaboration piece. But I think leaders have definitely, to be successful these days, you need to be a lot more open-minded and you need to be a lot more agile. Um, and really, that again, that listen to understand piece. Um, everybody has an idea. Not all of them are great, but they're worth talking through and discussing. Um, so I think, yeah, it's very much around that democracy approach rather than an autocratic approach.
I love that. That well said. And that's a great way to sum it up. Democratic, not authoritarian or authoritative, um, collaborative. And I like where you said buzzwords. Yes, open-minded and agile. I love the agile piece because it means adaptable, and flexible. And we've got to sort of flex to different personality styles. And if we want people to bring their whole selves to work, which we do in 2025,
Absolutely, absolutely. It's that whole Richard Branson approach of, fail fast, try something. If it doesn't succeed, fail fast, move on.
and you've probably got 4 or 5 generations in a team in some of your teams, Andrea, and a leader has to go from a Gen Zer to a Gen Xer to a baby boomer to a millennial all in the one day. It's like, and that can be a challenge for leaders who aren't adaptable and flexible.
Absolutely. I've actually created a cheat sheet for a lot of our leaders that is a one pager of the different generations, what motivates them, what style they prefer, how they want to show up to work. And it's an interesting exercise to go through that with people and say, so this is how you manage a Gen X, this is how you work with a Gen Y, etc. And yeah, get the input into that.
I love it. And we did the same where you said facts and evidence. We went and read a whole lot of research around it and came up with 1 or 2 research reports that summarize beautifully. And we could probably take that further and do a one pager. I think that's such a great idea to, look at what do they value at work? What's important to a Gen X versus a millennial or versus a baby boomer who are ready for retirement versus, a Gen Zer who's just come into the workforce. And it won't be too long now. We're only a year or 2 away from having Gen Alphas in the workforce, from 2012. So, things are rapidly changing. Imagine you and I having doing this podcast in 5 years' time when there is Gen Alphas in the workforce, and like thinking, gee, what would they expect? Their careers don't even exist yet. Some of them.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's the stuff I love. I love I think my superpower is understanding people, and so I love what why are you here? What motivates you? What do you want from what can you bring and what can we bring to the table? You know, what's this all about? Because you spend so much time at work. We've all heard this. You spend so much time at work that you really want to enjoy what you do. And the days of turning up, taking a paycheck, and going home are pretty much long gone. People really want to understand the purpose of the organization, how they're contributing to society, and what's their role in that. And so it is such a two-way street.
Mm. And I think leaders that understand that, Andrea, are the most successful leaders, obviously, in 2025, because there's not one of the generations now really that doesn't want to be a little bit purpose driven. Role clarity is important across all the generations. Yes, work-life balance more for Gen Zers. Yes, financial stability for baby boomers. There's a few nuances, but I think, and again, regardless of generation, we're all just different humans, aren't we? Think about something like a disc profile. And are they D, S's or C's? And leaders, there's some leaders that don't even have that level of training or leadership skill, to understand that they're talking to a fact finder rather than an extrovert. So
Yep.
I love
Yep.
that. How did you develop that superpower? Having a superpower to understand humans.
I don't know. I think it's just a bit innate. It's just I've been a sticky beak and a people watcher my whole life. So I just, I just like to know what's going on and yeah, understanding people and getting to know them, asking the questions.
Being interested. What advice would you give? What's the advice, or even a mantra? I know yours was about the standard that you walk past is the standard you accept. What's the advice for an up and coming leader in 2025? Maybe outside of understand people as the stuff that you've given us already. What do you coach a new leader in 2025? It's their first leadership role. One of the most common requests we get is first leaders. Straight out off the tools, they're a technical person. They're going into leadership role. Can you coach or can you train those? Yep, absolutely. What would you advise those leaders to be thinking about in their early days of leadership?
I think there's probably a couple of things. One is don't be afraid of difficult conversations. I think too many people are afraid of offending someone. And so we tend to skirt away from those difficult or confrontational conversations. We call them a courageous conversation. And for me, people want to know if they're performing or if they're not performing, and they want to know what those boundaries are. And so you can put that in place by having a courageous conversation. And so long as you are fair, kind, and respectful when having that conversation, it will 9 times out of 10 be well received. I think the best thing that we can do as humans is be kind. It doesn't mean that you don't speak the truth. It doesn't mean that you shy away from hard things. It just means that you tackle them with kindness,
Beautiful. Tackle them with kindness.
or
Oh,
approach them with kindness is probably a better way of saying
that's right. Tackle them metaphorically, not
it. Yeah, exactly. Metaphorically,
literally.
not actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, approach things with kindness.
Andrea Hayden, thank you so very much for a great chat. Love that. In closing, and the last question that I always ask is, and you might do this online or offline, and this is how you and I met. Is there a great human or two that you think might be a great podcast guest for one of our future episodes? If so, would you mind connecting us with some great humans, pretty please?
Absolutely. I've already got someone in mind for you.
Thank you so much. Now,
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, Anton.
oh, great conversation. I love our HR execs. Oh, we seem to have a run of HR execs recently. It's really cool. And it's just got such a great perspective on life, because you really get that influence piece, because you are sitting in a support role, a service role. HR's in service. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get, just the difference and the dichotomy between a frontline leader and someone in HR, where you've still got to make a difference in an organization, but you can't do it through direction. There's that whole
Absolutely. We're the ones behind the scenes, ensuring everything kind of weaves together and understanding all those nuances.
starts with relationships.
Absolutely.
I love it. Thank you, Andrew. You're amazing. Now, before we get off, do you ever engage external leadership trainers or providers, or do you do it all internally?
We do engage, yes. We do a lot internally. As I'm sure you can imagine, being a global organization, we have quite a range to draw from. But that doesn't mean that we don't do things locally as well.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Because I wanted just to let you know, part of this is, in case there's ever the opportunity to serve, we would love to be,
Yes.
front and center if you're ever looking for an external service provider who could come in and bring a bit of passion and bring 20 years of experience at working with frontline leaders.
Fantastic.
We offer, and you can say no if you'd like to, which saves us some money, but you can say yes if you'd also like to as well. If you would like to do your disc profile, we offer a free disc profiling survey.
Fantastic.
So you can, if you respond to Deb when Debbie sends that closeout email, Deb will send you the opportunity to do a disc profile. And if you'd like to, great, we'd love to. And then, of course, I can take you through that if you'd like to, or you can read the report. And always intriguing, the disc profiles. I find them pretty cool. So
Yeah. I love all that profiling.
oh,
It's so
absolutely. You
interesting.
would do, being in HR. You do a lot of that with the teams, I'm sure. And what do you use, Andrea? What's another good one?
So we actually work with a company called Smart Leader, and they've created their own. So they've taken it's similar but different to Myers-Briggs. So they've got 20 years of research, and actually I think they created it close to 20 years ago, and they've continued to evolve it over the last 20 years, working with a team of psychologists. And so it's called Wide Up Character Profiling. through Smart Leader. And so you end up with one of 4 colors. So similar to all the others, you end up with one of 4 colors. And then your subset under that around extrovert, introvert, jump starter, pressure prompted, etc. We've rolled that out across most of Australia and New Zealand, and it's been I find it fascinating to watch people's responses to it, because everyone's goes in really cynical and like, yeah, 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 and then they read their profile and go, oh yeah, oh my
That
god,
was
that
like
is
me.
me.
I know. How do I do 20 questions and you get me so right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's crazy, isn't it? And
Those
that means
psychologists, those research psychologists, are smart people.
smart humans, smart humans.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on today. You've been amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for listening or viewing our Find Your Influence podcast with Anton Guinea. Another great chat. Please be one of the 10% of people who follow and subscribe and like our videos, so that you can get more of them and you can hear more of our amazing conversations, the conversations that I get to have and that I get to share.